Sure.
All
There we
right,
go.
all set?
All right. Well, welcome everybody to Meta Smart Glasses Meets Accessibility. My name is Heather Berg. I'm a digital equity specialist here with Accessible Web. And my tagline on our first slide here just says creating equity in the digital space through my blindness lived experience. So we can move on to the next slide. Um, Meta, smart glasses in general, AI. This is a big hot topic right now with a lot of different angles and aspects to cover. So our next slide is just going to give us an overview of the topics, specific topics related to the smart glasses that we are going to talk about today. So the first thing we'll do is just a very brief intro to AI-powered smart glasses. What are they? What makes them smart? How do they work? The second thing we'll cover is some use cases. What are folks using them for in everyday life, and what are some specific strategies for using them as an assistive technology, specifically for people who are blind or visually impaired. We'll touch a little bit on how this technology, AI, and in particular in these smart glasses, has just opened up a world of descriptive visual information to people who are blind or visually impaired. We'll also talk about some very real potentials and risks to working with this technology, in particular as assistive technology. And then finally, we'll wrap up by making the case that as powerful and robust and amazing as this technology is, it is by no means a substitute or replacement for accessibility done right, which means where the needs of people with disabilities are taken into consideration kind of from the ground up on any sort of project, whether that's the physical world or the digital world. And then we'll finish after that with a Q&A, and I'm going to provide a resource list, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. Moving on to the next slide, now we're going to cover some key features of smart glasses. So typically the way they work is through a Bluetooth connection. They pair with a smartphone, and through that connection, it gives the glasses access to the cellular Wi-Fi antennas on that smartphone device, and in turn, a connection to the internet. They have built-in camera to capture photo and video. They have audio output, so there are speakers in the frames of the glasses. They also have microphones for audio input for recording and voice commands. And when you put all these pieces together with the internet connection, it allows you to communicate directly with an AI or artificial intelligence assistant running on an LLM. On to our next slide. Now we're going to talk about some common everyday use cases, kind of what are these products marketed typically for. And the first one I think is probably one that we all know about, and that is live streaming or recording content for posting to social media. They're also being used just to capture photo and video of everyday life. And folks are really embracing that convenient hands-free access to the AI assistant for things like making general inquiries, setting reminders, making and receiving phone calls, um, getting recommendations from maybe like places to go, things to try, like restaurants, that sort of thing, and just generally learning more about the world around them. Next slide, we're going to talk about how these smart glasses in particular can be leveraged as assistive technology for people who are blind or visually impaired. Um, so the first way is just that direct by voice access to the AI assistant, which really just opens up like almost a limitless world of described visual information. And we'll talk about some specific use cases here in a minute, but in general terms. The second thing, second way they can be used as assistive technology is through a connection with a live visual interpreting service, something like Ira. And then third, Meta has a direct integration for the Be My Eyes platform. And just as a brief aside, if you're not familiar with IRA or Be My Eyes, for anyone not looking at the slides, IRA is spelled AIRA. So IRA is a subscription-based, fee-based service where their users, who they call explorers, can, through the smart glasses, connect directly with a live trained visual interpreter who can assist with a myriad of tasks from home to work to out and about in the community. Um, and the Be My Eyes platform is very similar, although the connection there is similarly, it's one-way audio, or excuse me, one-way video and two-way audio, and that connects people who are blind or visually impaired with volunteers from all around the globe, who can also assist with those tasks. It is worth noting that IRA and Be My Eyes also have their own integrated AI assistants running on different LLMs than the Meta Smart Assistant. But it is nice in that it gives the user some options if they're not getting the results. For example, from one AI, they can switch over and see if they can leverage another one. Now, as far as some specific use cases or everyday scenarios where folks might use this technology, um, of course, the instantaneous access to the AI, it gives you access to probably more described visual information than any of us could ever process. But some common things that we might use that for would be things like locating specific landmarks, reading signs. So if you think about, like, I want to go to the park. I know where the park is and I know how to get there. But when I get there, I might want to know where the picnic tables are, or where the swings, or are there other dogs there? And these are places where you could use this technology to glean that additional contextual information. Um, so you could scan documents for something like reading or sorting your mail, reading a restaurant menu. And with this also document scanning, I'm just going to pause and say, also for context, we've had optical character recognition, OCR, technology for some time now, which could do these same things. However, the important distinction to make here with the AI component is that now we can request specifically contextual information. So if I'm reading a menu in a restaurant and it's, has 20 different things on it, and I only want to know about the salads, now I can request specifically, hey Meta, read me the information related to salads, or tell me about the salads on this menu. And that way I'm getting directly to what I need without all the extraneous bits that I may not need or be interested in. So that's a big distinction between traditional OCR and this AI enabled document reading. Um, you could use this. Another case would be reading content on a screen that's otherwise inaccessible to you. Maybe for some reason you've got a pop-up, or you've installed a new application or something, and for whatever reason your screen reader just isn't interacting with it. You could use the glasses to, starting out with the AI, see if you can at least figure out what's on the screen, get a little more interaction, and then, knowing you always have the backup of being able to reach out to a human through the same piece of technology to get additional information. Um, Things like identifying colors or styles of clothing, right? So maybe you're out shopping and you have a question about something you're looking at, or maybe you have a new shirt, but you're not sure which of your pairs of pants maybe that it goes best with. The AI can help you out with that as well. Getting information about like products on the shelf at a grocery store. So if you're me, you're always going to the ice cream aisle, but maybe so you know how to get there, but once you get there, how do you find your favorite brand or your favorite flavor? So again, we're requesting that contextual specific information, and hopefully making things a little more efficient. Um, Accessing otherwise inaccessible equipment or documents or screens, maybe on the job. Maybe there's like a microwave in the break room at your work, and the buttons aren't labeled. Now you have, through this piece of technology, hands-free, you have some options for getting that information. And last but certainly not least is real-time navigation assistance when you're out and about in the community. And so I think about this one, I've used it quite a lot, like in an airport, for example. So maybe you know you're at the right concourse, but you're not sure if your gate is to the right or the left, or you know you're close to your gate, but you need to read some signs and figure out where you need to go from here. So again, queuing up the AI, if you're not getting what you need, you always have that nice backup of being able to use Be My Eyes or Ira. Moving right along, we're going to talk now about some potential risks or drawbacks or considerations with using this type of technology. The first one probably almost goes without saying, and that is privacy and security. So where are all of these requests for information we're making going? All these photos we're taking or videos we're sharing, where are they being stored? Who else has access to them? Are they being sold? I mean, that's a whole other like webinar topic on its own, but certainly a consideration, and a lot of it comes down to personal choice. Another one is that AI still frequently gets things wrong, right? So we need to be able to be in a position to kind of make that discernment of, does this sound right? Is this maybe a little bit off? And then being able to kind of make that decision of whether you need to call in a human for backup. But certainly in situations where the accuracy of the information really counts, that's something to consider. There's a learning curve with adopting this technology. It's as convenient and easy to use, relatively speaking, as it is out of the box. It's not going to start like changing your life. You need to learn about it, how to use it, learn the commands, how to best interact with that AI to glean the information that you're specifically looking for. So there is definitely a commitment on the side of the user to work with the technology to get to a point where it's most useful for you. There's a cost associated with this. The Meta Smart glasses are probably some of the more reasonably priced glasses on the market right now, and they're still in the $300 to $400 range, which is a considerable chunk of change for a lot of folks. So the cost is a consideration. And last but again not least, you need a strong, reliable connection to the internet. And if that's not happening, none of the magic is happening. And so that's something that you need to have readily available for everything to align. All right, next slide. So for all, like I mentioned earlier, all the amazing goodness, robustness, and capabilities of these glasses and AI um, use cases, they are certainly not a replacement or a substitute for accessibility done right, where the needs of users with disabilities have been taken into consideration. And to make this case, to illustrate it a little bit more clearly, we're going to talk through just a couple again of real world scenarios, things we can probably all relate to, that puts a little bit of finer point on this. And as we talk through this last section, I want us to kind of keep our focus on that sort of equity lens. So I'm getting more information, but if I'm looking at it through that creating equitable experiences lens, am I having an experience that is on par with my sighted, whether it's my colleague or my family member or whatever the case is? Okay. So one scenario that most of us are probably familiar with is filling out paperwork at the doctor's office, right? So no matter how much you plan ahead, you get there, inevitably there's like a clipboard with paperwork that you have to fill out. So, okay, well, I have this new technology. I can put on my smart glasses. I can scan these documents and read them and get a lot more information about what's there. But in doing so, I'm leaving an unmet need, and I'm also potentially creating another concern for myself. The unmet need is maybe I can read the documents now, but I'm not likely going to get the precision navigation that I need to fill it out by hand. And in fact, if I don't see well, I might not even be able to do that. So, from an accessibility standpoint, big unmet need there. Second thing is, this is a medical document. What kind of gobs of personally identifying information is on it. Do I really want to take a picture of this and send it into the ether for translation? So again, no judgment, totally down to personal choice. But if that paperwork had been queued up in your provider's app that you could have filled out ahead of time, or on their website, or even if they handed you a tablet with accessibility features built in, that would be a much more equitable experience to the person who can see just fine sitting next to you in the waiting room to what they're having. There's something here that we like to call the disability tax. All right. So if we again think about equity in this situation, like, yep, I have these glasses, I can read the paperwork and I can figure out what it's about. But again, I've laid out $400 to purchase this like additional layer between me and the inaccessible paperwork that, again, through the equity lens, my sighted peer sitting next to me in the waiting room has not had that outlay to be able to just complete a form. And in terms of thinking about a tax, we talk about it a lot of times in terms of things that financially cost people with disabilities more, can also be a tax on, there's an increased cognitive load. There can be a tax on your cognitive capacities. So if we think about a scenario where we're dealing with an inaccessible screen that frequently comes up at work, whether it's an application we use or whatever the case may be. So I know this thing comes up, I know I have to deal with it. So now, again, through the equity lens, compared to what my sighted colleague is doing, clicking through and moving on with their life, I'm getting out the additional layer of technology. I'm troubleshooting probably first, which is the best piece of technology? How do I navigate this? Now I can read it, which is an absolute step in the right direction, because when I call IT, I know what I'm talking about. And yet, this is taking a tax on my cognitive capacities to problem solve my way through all of this just to get my job done. And in turn, if it was accessible to begin with, my colleague and I would be having a much more parity between our experience of getting our work completed. And to that same end, it's inefficient, right? So we're at work, we're generally expected to be productive. Now, even with the advancements that this technology is offering me, with all the steps we've already talked about, it's wildly inefficient compared to if it was just accessible to begin with. I would have dealt with it and moved on like 10 minutes ago. So hopefully that makes sense for the case. And I'm going to finish up. I know I've been talking for a long time. Peter promised 5 or 10 minutes. I'm sure we're over that. Last thing I will say is that for all of our registrants, you will be receiving a resource list after today's presentation wraps up. And that is mainly because I know this is a vast topic with a lot of different angles and people who are interested with different use cases. And so I was hoping there was a little something for everybody here today. And if that wasn't the case, I've curated some resources that might get you some more information depending on what angle you're coming at this from. So there are links to the services I talked about, Ira and Be My Eyes, if you're interested in either volunteering or signing up for service. I've curated a list of disabled social media content creators who are on YouTube and all the other platforms who I know I've vetted and I know have good quality value content up related specifically to the Meta Smart Glasses and how to use them with tutorials and tips and tricks and all the things. I'm also included a Google document with a list of some of the voice commands to use with the Meta Smart Glasses to get up and running. I did not create that document, cannot take credit for it. The authors are credited at the top of that document, but there's a lot of good information in there if you're just getting started. And finally, I've included a link to a Facebook group for blind and visually impaired users of Meta Smart Glasses. I find that to primarily be a group of folks who are blind and visually impaired, but I also do sometimes see folks in there vision rehabilitation specialists or friends or family. It's a moderated group that you have to request to join. But if that feels like it might be a fit, that is also crammed with full with advice and tutorials and support if you're making your way through this process and you're feeling great or you're feeling frustrated or a little bit of both. You might find some connection there. So that's it from me. Thank you so much. And we will be taking questions now.